Well, I'm going to reshoot engines because last time I shot this video, I didn't hit record. Yeah. I'm still sitting around waiting on a couple of emails for reference sources for the book I'm using. So, I got one reference source, so I can go ahead and start into engines, the overview. This will be a YouTube series on the history of the Volkswagen Beetle. We're starting in the engine and working our way out. So that's how this is going to work. So starting with the engine, 1938, first year of the Volkswagen. First year the engine was made, of course. It was a 985cc engine, flat 4, air-cooled. It made 24 brake horsepower at 3,000 RPM. Had a single barrel carburetor and a generator. Generator is a power generation device using DC current to recharge a battery. I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't know how that all works with alternating current, direct current. But your car you drive every day has an alternator using AC current to recharge a battery and run certain systems in the car. I don't know how all that works. Don't ask me. The Volkswagen uses a generator, direct current, subject to fluctuation in power output based on engine RPM. Anyhow, that was the first engine they made. It was kind of a test bed. It didn't really work. Kind of. It was prone to a lot of major flaws. Then in 1943, they came out with the second engine, the 1131cc engine, making 31 brake horsepower at 3,300 RPM. Definitely stepping it up there. Just to give you a frame of reference, early Volkswagen Beetles weighed 1,760 US pounds. So, not exactly a heavy car to be pushed around by 31 horsepower. Really not bad. They used cooling fans attached to generators to cool their oil coolers. It's a relatively simple setup. Kind of like a fixed cooling flow. They had no radiators, no water system in them. Anyhow. Then in 1944, the Type 166 Firmenwagen, which was based on the Volkswagen Thing. Don't remember the type designation for that one. They're based on the Volkswagen Thing, kind of a boxy, square, utilitarian vehicle Volkswagen came out with that wasn't a Beetle. Firmenwagen was four-wheel drive. It was the first of its kind, really, in Volkswagen that was four-wheel drive. It completely sealed was what's the word I'm looking for now? Amphibious. It had a propeller driven off the front of the crankshaft with a god dang. The crank pulley, that's the one I'm looking for. I'm not editing this stuff out for those who are wondering. Crank pulley was it was basically the prop was driven off that, had a little extension on it that ran to the prop, which was lift up, put down. A little interesting setup, but that's just me. Then post-war, 1948, they had a lever on the fan housing that would select airflow, closing off one of the two intake ports on the cooling shroud. So just allow you to have more cooling in the winter and less in the summer. So you didn't overcool the engine, basically. Not that it would hurt it, you just would get no heat. That's the only real thing there was. That was also the year of the coffee tin air filter. For those restorers out there in the world, that's the valuable object. Highly prized in the restoration world. Worth a fortune if you have one. And 53 came around. We had the 1131cc engine still. It got the oil bath air filter, which is relatively simple design. You suck air in through oil, which grabs all the particulates in it, put it through the oil into the engine. Pretty simple setup. The way it worked, the oil would grab all the little dust particles and crap out of the air. You could use oil out of your last oil change as long as there wasn't a bunch of large particles in it. It would work just fine. It costs like $5 to fill up, whereas your modern cartridge air filter costs about $100. As you can see, modern companies don't want you using oil bath. You wind up screwing them out of a lot of money doing that. That's why I put one on my truck. I'm sure it has flow issues, but I'm not too worried about that. That was also the year, 1953, of the Solex 28 PCI single barrel carburetor. It was a more efficient, more reliable unit than the old carburetor. It was another single barrel. No one really knows the specs that I know of. I couldn't find it anywhere personally. But that was kind of like the carburetor that carried on throughout the world until, I think, 78. Let me check my facts real quick. Yeah, 78 was when the last one of those was fitted. Anyhow, in 1956, we had the 1192cc engine, which came out in December of 1953. It had 36 horsepower at 3,700 RPM. It just had a larger cylinder bore. That's how they accomplished it. So they didn't really change much in the engine, just made the cylinder a little bit bigger. And for those that want the reference, an aircraft cylinder is quite large compared to a Volkswagen cylinder. You could fit the bottom end of a Volkswagen cylinder inside the aircraft cylinders, because I know those out there in the world know that aircraft are air-cooled engines as well, running on flat fours. And everyone's going to be saying, oh, well, why does the 1192cc engine make 36 horsepower? Is that how much an aircraft engine makes? No, an aircraft engine makes over 150 horsepower from a 3000cc engine, alright? There's a huge cylinder bore difference here, alright? There are home builders out there that use Volkswagen engines to power their aircraft, but those are ultralights, very light aircraft, not just ultralights. So, yeah, a Beetle engine is basically an aircraft engine. Would I trust my life to one? No, not enough power for my opinion. At least not an 1192cc one. But in 1962, we came out with the new 1192. Nothing really changed. It got 40 more horse. I think that was mostly fuel system upgrades. Just better fuel flow, better airflow through it all, better exhaust system, better timing, better ignition. Bumped it up to 40 horse. This new engine came out in August of 1960. So, new revelation for the time. Made the Beetle pretty spunky at, again, 1,760 pounds. Running on 40 horse. Power to weight's pretty good. 1967, the 1500cc engine came out. It's actually a 1493cc engine. We just rounded it up because walking into the deal going, I'll need the 1493cc engine. Doesn't sound quite as cool. Walking in going, I'll take the 1500cc engine. It's more of simplicity and sounding cool when you go into the dealer. The 1500 came out. It made 53 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. It was a common engine in the Type 2. For those not familiar with the Type system, the Type 1 is the Bug. Type 2 is the Bus. Type 3 is the compact car, kind of like a Corvair. They had the fastback, the squareback, the notchback, the saloon, the sedan, the coupe. They had all kinds of those. So those were all the ones. The Karmann Ghia, not really a typed car because it was produced. It was a Volkswagen chassis, so engine, transmission, drivetrain, axles, wheels, underfloor, with the body made by a company called Karmann Ghia. They would take the engine, they'd tune it a little bit, drop a new body on it, and sell it. It had the Volkswagen badge on it. It was worked out with the company of Volkswagen to make that happen. So they're not really type rated. So they're not like a Type 4. Type 4 was some really disgusting creation made by Volkswagen that no one really talks about no more. Just throwing that out there. The 1500cc engine, let's get back on topic here, was the finest engine Volkswagen ever made. They were produced from 1967 until Doom of the Beetle. That's how long those engines were run. They were very powerful, very reliable. That's what they were. They weren't powerful. 53 horsepower. Not a lot of power there. But it was the best engine they made. And then in 1968, it was offered along with the 1200 still, which was the smaller engine, making 40 horse, as well as the 1300, which I'm not sure how much horsepower it was making, but it was definitely a decent engine. They also came out with a new all-bath air filter in that year. not really much of a difference. It's more of a collector's thing for looking at engine, deciding what year it is. 1974, which is a little while later, the 1584cc engine came out, which had new cylinder heads, which were dual ported instead of single ported. So the single port had a single hole with a, I don't think how best to describe it, an bent H divider in the middle of it to separate airflow into two cylinders. In 74, they put two ports in the cylinder head, one for each cylinder, their own intake valve and everything, to better increase airflow through the cylinders, basically giving it a boost in power. The new engine made 57 horsepower at 4,000 RPM, and this was also the last year of the generator. So we're going from that DC charging system over to an AC charging system. In 1975, the alternator came out, and this is just a testament to the original engine. The 1192cc engine was still in production and still being purchased by people. It had seen a bunch of upgrades by this point. It was making far more than the original 31 horsepower. It probably made somewhere close to 35, 37 horsepower by now, which is a lot of that's a big horsepower step for a Volkswagen. All right, keep that in mind. 1978 rolled around, not much really changed. It's the last year of the carburetor. And then in 1979, the Bosch AFC fuel injection system was implemented in all the US models. And they threw a catalytic converter in them. At this point, sort of spelled the death of the Volkswagen Beetle. So that's basically the ends of the engines. At that point, they went to the new Beetle, which is kind of like the mid-tier Beetle now, which had an water-cooled front engine. Kind of lost the Beetle already. Relatively decent car in production design. Not a big fan of it personally, though. Then there was new Beetle. 2009, I think, was the first one of those came out. Or the 2011, I can't remember. It's not a Beetle, guys. It's anything from a 1.6 liter to a 22.2 liter turbocharged, naturally aspirated front engine, water cooled thing. It has the body style of a Beetle, but all it is a body in the name. It doesn't carry a soul of Volkswagen no more. Personally, I wouldn't consider it a Beetle, but we'll get into that discussion later. That's it for today.